The mail coach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty general store, and Rose Langley pressed her gloved hand against the window, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack right through her ribs. Lincoln, New Mexico Territory, 1878. The place that would either become her salvation or her grave, depending on whether the man who'd sent for her turned out to be decent or dangerous. She'd learned the hard way that you couldn't always tell from letters, no matter how proper the penmanship or how kind the words seemed on paper. Her calico dress, the best one she owned, felt suddenly inadequate as she stepped down from the coach onto the packed earth of the main street. The fabric was faded from too many washings, the blue flowers barely visible against the cream background, but it was clean and pressed, and all she had to offer as a first impression. Miss Langley. A weathered man with a silver badge pinned to his vest approached, removing his hat. "I'm Sheriff Pat Garrett. I'm afraid I've got some difficult news for you." The words hit her like a physical blow. She knew that tone. She'd heard it before when they'd told her about her father, about her brother, about every person who'd ever promised to take care of her and then left her alone in this hard world. "He's gone, isn't he?" Rose heard herself say, her voice sounding distant and strange. "Mr. Thornton." 3 days ago, the sheriff confirmed, his weathered face creasing with genuine sympathy. Heart gave out in his sleep, peaceful from what Doc Reynolds said. "I'm real sorry, miss. We tried to get word to you, but the mail moves slower than coaches, and you were already on your way." Rose stood very still, aware of people stopping to stare, aware of the hot sun beating down on her bonnet, aware that she had exactly $8.30 to her name and no way to get back to Boston, even if there was anything waiting for her there, which there wasn't. She'd given up her position as a seamstress, sold everything she owned except what fit in her single trunk, and traveled 2,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met who had inconveniently died before she arrived. "I see," she said, because what else was there to say? "The thing is," Sheriff Garrett continued, looking uncomfortable now, "Thornton's ranch goes to his nephew, fellow by the name of Adam Oakley. He's a good man, works the ranch hard, but he's young yet. 27. Been running the place mostly on his own anyway, since his uncle took sick last year." "I understand," Rose said, though she didn't understand anything except that she was stranded in a territory she'd never seen before with barely enough money to survive a week. "Is there a boarding house in town where I might find lodging while I figure out my situation?" "There is, but Miss Langley, perhaps you should at least meet Adam. He might want to honor his uncle's arrangement." Rose felt heat flood her cheeks. "Sheriff, I'm not a piece of property to be inherited along with cattle and land. If Mr. Oakley wants a wife, he can advertise for one himself." The sheriff had the grace to look ashamed. "You're right, miss. I apologize. The boarding house is just down the street, the white building with the blue shutters. Mrs. Chen runs it. She's fair with her prices." Rose managed to thank him and retrieve her trunk from the coach before walking down the street with as much dignity as she could muster. Her legs felt like water, her stomach like lead, but she kept her chin up and her shoulders back the way her mother had taught her before the fever took her. "Ladies don't crumble in public," her mother used to say. "Save your tears for when you're alone." The boarding house was clean at least, and Mrs. Chen was a small Chinese woman with kind eyes and no-nonsense manner, who quoted her a price that would eat through Rose's savings in less than 2 weeks. She paid for 3 nights and carried her trunk up to a small room that overlooked the main street. Only when the door was closed behind her did she sink down onto the narrow bed and let herself feel the full weight of her disaster. She'd been so careful. She'd corresponded with James Thornton for 4 months before agreeing to come west. His letters had been thoughtful, honest about his age and his health problems, clear about what he could offer and what he was looking for. A companion, he'd written, someone to share the evenings with, to bring some gentleness back into a house that's been without a woman's touch for too long. He'd sent money for her passage, money she'd already spent on the ticket and new undergarments and a small wedding gift for him that now sat wrapped in her trunk, useless as everything else. Rose didn't let herself cry. Crying solved nothing. Instead, she unpacked her few belongings, washed her face in the basin, and went back downstairs to ask Mrs. Chen about work. "Can you sew?" Mrs. Chen asked, looking her over with sharp eyes. "Yes, madam. I was a seamstress in Boston for 6 years. I can do regular sewing, alterations, fancy work, embroidery." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "Might be there's work for you. Martha Stevens does most of the sewing in town, but she's getting old. Her eyes aren't what they used to be. And there's always cowboys tearing their shirts and pants, needing patches and buttons. You go see her tomorrow, tell her I sent you." It wasn't much, but it was something. Rose thanked her and went back upstairs, trying to calculate how long she could stretch $8 and whatever sewing money she might earn, trying not to think about winter coming, or what would happen if no work materialized. She didn't sleep well that night. The sounds of Lincoln were different from Boston, all the rhythms unfamiliar. Horses instead of carriages, the occasional whoop from the saloon down the street, the wind that never seemed to stop blowing. She dozed fitfully and woke before dawn, exhausted and anxious and determined not to waste time feeling sorry for herself. After a breakfast of coffee and bread at the boarding house, Rose asked directions to Martha Stevens' home and set out, her small sewing kit in hand as evidence of her skills. The morning was already warm, promising another scorching day, and dust devils spun in the streets as wagons rolled past. She was so focused on finding the right house that she didn't notice the horse until it was nearly beside her. The rider pulled up and Rose looked up into the sun, shading her eyes. Miss Langley, the man who swung down from the saddle, was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. He wore working clothes, denim pants and a chambray shirt faded from many washings, boots that were scuffed and dusty. A cowboy through and through, from the set of his shoulders to the easy way he moved. But it was his eyes that caught her, blue as the sky above them and startlingly direct. "I'm Adam Oakley," he said, and there was something in his voice, a roughness that spoke of grief not quite swallowed down. "My uncle's nephew. I wanted to meet you to apologize for this situation. Uncle James, he talked about you all the time these last few months. Was real excited about you coming. I'm sorry he didn't get to meet you." Rose felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. There was genuine sorrow in this man's face, and she realized that while she'd lost a stranger, he'd lost someone he loved. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said quietly. "His letters were very kind. I was looking forward to meeting him too." Adam shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "Sheriff Garrett said he mentioned something about me maybe, well, taking over the arrangement. I want you to know that wasn't my idea, and I don't expect anything of the sort. I just wanted to meet you proper and tell you that, if you need help getting back east or getting settled here or whatever you decide to do, the Oakley family owes you that much at least." His directness was almost startling after so many years of Boston politeness, where everyone talked around things. Rose found she appreciated it, even as she kept her guard up. "That's generous of you, Mr. Oakley, but I don't need charity. I'm going to find work here and make my own way." "It's not charity," he said, meeting her eyes steadily. "Uncle James sent for you in good faith. You came all this way because of a promise, and it's not your fault that promise couldn't be kept. The least I can do is help you get on your feet." Rose wanted to refuse, pride burning hot in her chest, but practicality won out. "I'm going to see about sewing work. If that doesn't pan out, perhaps I'll take you up on your offer of help finding other employment. But I won't take money I haven't earned." Something shifted in Adam's expression, a flash of what might have been respect or approval. "Fair enough. Martha Stevens lives just there, the yellow house. She's a good woman, and she'll be honest with you about whether there's work to be had. If you don't mind my asking, where are you heading after? Back to the boarding house, I suppose. Would you let me buy you lunch at the hotel restaurant? As an apology for the situation, nothing more. You can tell me to go to hell if you want, but I'd appreciate the chance to tell you about Uncle James, the things he didn't put in letters. I think you might like to know what kind of man he was." Rose studied him for a long moment, this cowboy with sad eyes and an honest face who'd just given her an opening to refuse without feeling trapped or obligated. In Boston, men never gave you that option. They pushed and pressed and expected you to yield because that was what women did. "Lunch would be acceptable," she said finally. "After I speak with Mrs. Stevens, say around noon." Adam's face broke into a smile that transformed him entirely, bringing light into those blue eyes and deepening the lines around them. "Noon at the Lincoln Hotel. Thank you, Miss Langley." He swung back onto his horse with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle and tipped his hat to her before riding off. Rose watched him go, then shook herself and continued to Martha Stevens' house, trying not to think about how that smile had made something flutter in her chest. Martha Stevens was indeed old, with thick glasses and gnarled fingers that shook slightly as she examined the samples of Rose's work. But her mind was sharp, and she nodded approvingly at the neat stitches and careful hems. "You do good work," she said in a thin, reedy voice. "Truth is, I've been wanting to pass some jobs along. My hands just aren't steady enough anymore for the detail work, and my eyes give out after an hour or two. If you're willing to work for fair prices and do quality work, I can send customers your way. Won't make you rich, but it'll keep you fed if you're careful with your money." Relief flooded through Rose so strongly she felt dizzy. "I'm willing, Mrs. Stevens, and I'm grateful for the opportunity." "Don't be too grateful yet," Martha said dryly. "Cowboys are hard on clothes and harder on seamstresses, always wanting things done yesterday and complaining about prices. But they pay eventually, and there's always more work. Can you start today? I've got 3 shirts need patching and a dress that needs taking in." Rose started. By the time she left Martha's house, 2 hours later with an armful of mending, a list of other potential customers, and coins in her pocket as an advance, she felt like maybe, possibly, she could survive this disaster after all. Adam was waiting outside the hotel when she arrived, freshly washed and with his hair combed back, though it still fell forward across his forehead. He held the door for her, and they settled at a corner table where the noise from the main room wouldn't overwhelm them. "Did it go well with Martha?" he asked after they'd ordered, and Rose found herself telling him about the work, about Martha's kindness, about the relief of having something solid to hold on to. Adam listened with full attention, not interrupting, not dismissing, just listening the way so few people did. When she finished, he nodded. "That's good news. Martha's tough but fair, and if she's vouching for you, folks will trust your work." He paused, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "I wanted to tell you about Uncle James like I promised. He was a good man. Came out here back in '59 when this was even wilder than it is now. Built up that ranch from nothing, worked harder than anyone I ever knew. When my parents died of cholera 10 years back, he took me in without question. I was 17, angry at the world, didn't want to be anyone's burden. He never treated me like one, taught me ranching, Taught me how to be a man, how to be decent. Rose saw the grief raw in his face and felt an answering ache in her own chest. She knew about losing people, about being the one left behind. "He sounds like someone I would have liked very much," she said softly. "He would have treated you well," Adam continued. "He didn't want a young wife or some beauty to show off. He just wanted someone to talk to in the evenings, someone to share his life with. He was lonely after my aunt died, and he got more lonely as he got older. When he decided to send for a mail-order bride, I thought maybe it was a foolish idea, but then your letters started coming, and I saw how happy they made him. He'd read them out loud at dinner sometimes, laughing at something you said, smiling over your descriptions of Boston. You made his last months happier, Miss Langley. That's worth something." Unexpected tears stung Rose's eyes and she blinked them back fiercely. "Thank you for telling me that. It does help, knowing the letters mattered to him." Their food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. The hotel restaurant served decent beef stew and fresh bread, better than Rose had eaten in days. She was reaching for her water glass when Adam spoke again. "Can I ask you something personal? You can tell me to mind my own business if you want. You can ask. Why did you agree to come west? To marry a man you'd never met? You're clearly educated, clearly capable. Seems like you could have made a life in Boston." Rose set down her spoon carefully, choosing her words. "Boston stopped having anything for me a year ago. My father died, left debts I couldn't pay. I lost our house, lost everything except what I could carry. I was living in a boarding house smaller and dirtier than the one here, working 14-hour days at the dress shop, barely making enough to survive. I had no family left, no prospects, no way to improve my situation. When I saw your uncle's advertisement, it seemed like a chance at something different. A home, a partner, a future that was more than just survival." Understanding flickered across Adam's face. "You were brave to take the chance, or desperate," Rose said with a slight smile. "The line between the two is pretty thin sometimes. Either way, you're here now and you've got work and a place to stay. That's more than some folks manage." He hesitated, then continued. "I meant what I said about helping if you need it. The ranch, it's mine now, all legal and proper. Uncle James left everything to me, and it's doing well. We've got good grazing land, strong cattle, and I've got 3 hands who know their business. I'm not rich, but I'm solid. If you need anything, a loan to get you through until the sewing work picks up, a recommendation for other work, anything at all, you just have to ask." Rose studied him across the table, this cowboy with his honest eyes and his open face, and felt something shift inside her. She'd been so wary for so long, so careful about trusting anyone, but there was something about Adam Oakley that felt real in a way most people didn't. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. "You don't know me. Your uncle is gone, you have no obligation here." Adam was quiet for a moment, his gaze dropping to his plate. When he looked up, there was something vulnerable in his expression. "Because Uncle James cared about you, even though he'd never met you. Because you came all this way in good faith and got dealt a bad hand through no fault of your own. And because—" He paused, a faint color rising in his tanned cheeks. "Because when I saw you standing in the street this morning in that calico dress, looking lost and scared but trying so hard to be brave, I thought you were just about the prettiest thing I'd ever seen, and I wanted to know you better." Rose's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, so plainly, so unpolished, so completely sincere. "That's very forward, Mr. Oakley. I know. Sorry, I'm not much good at pretty words or fancy manners. I just say what I mean." "Don't apologize," Rose said, her heart doing strange things in her chest. "It's actually refreshing. But you should know I didn't come here looking for romance. I came looking for security, for stability, for a partnership based on practical considerations." "I understand that," Adam said. "And I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'd like to see you again if you'd allow it. As friends to start. No obligations, no expectations. Just two people getting to know each other." Rose should have said no. Should have protected herself, kept her distance, focused on building her new life without complications. But something in her, some part that had been locked down and careful for so long, wanted to take the risk. "Friends would be acceptable," she said slowly. "But Mr. Oakley, I need you to understand something. I won't be courted out of pity or obligation. If we're going to be friends, it has to be real." "It is real," Adam said immediately. "And you can call me Adam. We're not formal out here, not among friends. Then you should call me Rose." His smile was like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. "Rose, that suits you." They finished their meal talking about easier things, about Lincoln and the ranch and what life was like in the territory. Adam told her about the cattle drives, about the mountains where he sometimes went hunting, about the neighbors both friendly and hostile. Rose told him about Boston, about the ocean she'd never see again, about the seasons changing and the snow that New Mexico would never know the way Massachusetts did. When they parted outside the hotel, Adam tipped his hat to her. "I usually come into town on Saturdays for supplies. Maybe I could buy you lunch again. Or we could take a walk if the weather's nice." "Maybe," Rose said, trying not to smile too widely. "If I'm not too busy with mending." "I'll take maybe," Adam said, and rode off looking pleased with himself. Rose walked back to the boarding house with her arms full of mending and her head full of thoughts she shouldn't be having. She barely knew this man. He was a stranger, really, no matter how honest his eyes or how warm his smile. She needed to be careful, to be smart, to protect herself. But when she settled into her small room that evening and began working on the mending by lamplight, she found herself thinking about the way he'd listened to her, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. About how he'd offered help without making her feel small for needing it. About how he'd blushed when he called her pretty, like the words had come out before he could stop them. She was still thinking about it when she fell asleep that night, and she dreamed of blue eyes and calico dresses and futures that might be possible after all. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Rose worked on mending from dawn until her eyes hurt, building up a small collection of finished pieces to return to Martha. She met some of Martha's customers directly, making careful notes about what they needed and promising reasonable prices and quick turnarounds. The work was hard on her hands and eyes, but it was familiar, something she knew she was good at. And slowly her small supply of money began to grow instead of shrink. She saw Adam twice during those days, brief encounters on the street where he was running errands and she was delivering mending. They talked for a few minutes each time, easy conversations about nothing much, but each time Rose felt that flutter in her chest, that dangerous warmth spreading through her. On Saturday, true to his word, Adam found her outside the general store and asked if she'd like to take a walk. Rose agreed, and they strolled to the edge of town where you could see the mountains in the distance, purple and blue against the endless sky. "It's so big here," Rose said, staring at the horizon. "In Boston, everything felt closed in, buildings and people and noise everywhere. Here it feels like the world just keeps going forever." "It's intimidating at first," Adam agreed. "All that empty space. But after a while you start to appreciate it. The quiet, the breathing room, the way you can see weather coming from miles away." He glanced at her. "Do you miss Boston?" "I miss some things," Rose admitted. "The ocean. Real tea, not this coffee everyone drinks out here, having more than 3 dresses." She smiled slightly. But I don't miss being cold and poor and alone. Here, at least I'm just poor. You're not alone, Adam said quietly. Not anymore if you don't want to be. Rose looked at him, at this man who'd somehow become important to her in just a few short days. Adam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly, always. Are you being kind to me because you actually like me, or because you feel obligated to honor your uncle's commitment? Because if it's obligation, I'd rather know now. Adam stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Rose, when Uncle James first told me he was sending for a mail-order bride, I'll be honest, I had my doubts. Thought it might be some desperate woman looking for an easy life, or someone running from trouble, or just someone who'd make both their lives miserable because they didn't really know each other. But then he started reading me parts of your letters, and I realized you were real. Smart and honest and brave. And then I saw you standing in the street in that calico dress, and you were so pretty it made my chest hurt, but more than that, you were dignified. You just gotten the worst news, your whole life plan had fallen apart, and you were still standing tall, still trying to figure out what to do next instead of just falling apart. He took a breath. So no, this isn't about obligation. This is about me being drawn to you like I've never been drawn to anyone before. This is about wanting to know everything about you, what makes you laugh, what you dream about, what you want from life. This is about seeing you and thinking that calico dress makes simple beauty look like everything worth having in this world. Rose felt tears prick her eyes at the raw honesty in his voice, at the words that were clumsy and perfect all at once. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her like she was something precious and valuable instead of just convenient or useful. I'm drawn to you too, she whispered. And it scares me how fast this is happening. I came here for practical reasons, for security and stability, not for romance. Why can't you have both? Adam asked. Why can't we take our time, get to know each other proper, and see if this feeling between us is real and lasting? No rush, no pressure, just honest courtship between two people who like each other. Because I'm terrified, Rose admitted. I'm terrified of counting on someone and having them leave, of building a life around someone and losing everything when they're gone. Everyone I've ever loved has left me, Adam. My mother, my father, my brother, even your uncle in a way, though I never met him. I don't know if I can survive another loss. Adam reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand gently in his. His palm was calloused from hard work, warm and solid and real. I can't promise I'll never die, Rose. None of us can. Life out here is hard and uncertain, and accidents happen. But I can promise that I won't leave you by choice. I can promise that if you give me a chance, I'll do everything in my power to build a life with you that's worth having. And I can promise that I'll never lie to you, or lead you on, or waste your time with false hopes. Rose looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between her pale fingers and his sun-browned ones, and felt something inside her begin to crack open, all the careful walls she'd built starting to crumble. All right, she said softly. Courtship. Honest and slow, getting to know each other. But Adam, if at any point you realize this isn't what you want, you have to tell me. Promise me that. I promise. Same goes for you. They walked back to town hand in hand, not talking much, just being together in the warm afternoon sun. When they reached the boarding house, Adam squeezed her hand gently before letting go. Can I take you to church tomorrow? It's not much, just a circuit preacher who comes through once a month, but he's here this week, and everyone gathers at the schoolhouse. It'd be a good chance for you to meet more folks, make connections for your sewing business. I'd like that, Rose said. She watched him ride off, then went inside and up to her room, her heart full of hope and terror in equal measure. Mrs. Chen caught her on the stairs, a knowing look in her sharp eyes. "That Adam Oakley is a good man," she said. "His uncle raised him right. You could do worse." "We're just getting to know each other," Rose protested, but Mrs. Chen laughed. "That's how it starts. You watch. That boy looks at you like you hung the moon." Rose tried to dismiss the words, but she carried them with her as she worked on mending that evening, and they made her smile despite her determination to be sensible and cautious. Sunday morning dawned clear and beautiful, and Rose dressed carefully in her calico dress, the only good one she had. She wished she had something fancier for church, but there was no help for it. She fixed her hair as neatly as she could, pinned on her bonnet, and went downstairs to find Adam waiting with a small buggy instead of his horse. "Borrowed it from the livery," he explained, helping her up onto the seat. "Figured it'd be more comfortable than riding double." The schoolhouse was already full when they arrived, and Rose felt every eye turn to examine her as she entered on Adam's arm. She kept her chin up and her expression calm, the way she'd learned to do in Boston when people gossiped about her family's debts. The preacher was a round man with a booming voice who preached about love and redemption and second chances, and Rose tried to focus on his words instead of the awareness of Adam sitting beside her, their shoulders almost touching on the narrow bench. After the service, people crowded around to meet her. Sheriff Garrett was there with a kind-faced woman he introduced as his wife. Martha Stevens came over to tell several ladies about Rose's excellent sewing skills. A rancher named John Chisholm shook her hand and asked if she did saddle repairs, which she didn't but promised to learn. Mrs. Chen appeared with several other merchants' wives and invited Rose to a quilting circle that met on Wednesday afternoons. It was overwhelming and exhausting and wonderful all at once, being welcomed into this community, being seen as someone with value to offer instead of just someone to pity. Adam stayed close but not hovering, letting her navigate the conversations herself while making it clear by his presence that she had his support. When they finally escaped back to the buggy, Rose felt like she'd run a mile. "That was a lot," she said, and Adam laughed. "Lincoln folk are friendly once they decide you're all right, and having Martha vouch for your work helped. She's lived here longer than almost anyone and people trust her judgment." "Everyone was very kind," Rose said. "Though I saw some women giving me speculative looks, probably wondering what exactly is going on between us." "Let them wonder," Adam said easily. "We know what we're doing and that's all that matters." He drove her out to see the ranch after that, taking the long route so she could see the landscape. The rolling hills covered in grass that was still green from recent rains, the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. The ranch house was simple but well built, a long, low structure of adobe with a wooden porch running along the front. "Uncle James built it himself," Adam said as they pulled up. "Added onto it over the years as he could afford it. It's not fancy, but it's solid. Come on, I'll show you inside." The interior was neat but sparse, clearly a bachelor's residence. There was a main room with a large fireplace, a kitchen area with a good iron stove, 2 bedrooms, and a small office. The furniture was handmade but quality, everything arranged for function rather than beauty. "It could use a woman's touch," Adam said, sounding almost apologetic. "I keep it clean, but I'm not much for decoration or comfort beyond the basics." Rose walked through slowly, seeing the potential beneath the starkness. The main room could be warm and welcoming with curtains at the windows, some cushions on the chairs, maybe a rug on the floor. The kitchen had good bones, good storage, a solid work table. The bedrooms were plain but a decent size. "It's a good house," she said honestly. "Strong and practical." Everything a ranch house should be. They ate lunch on the porch, simple fare of bread and cheese and apples that Adam had packed, and he told her about the ranch operations, about the 3 hands who worked for him, about his plans to expand the herd next year if prices stayed good. "I want to build something lasting here," he said, staring out at the land. "Something I can be proud of, that Uncle James would have been proud of. A legacy, I guess you'd call it." "That's a good dream," Rose said softly. Adam turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "I want to build it with someone, Rose. I don't want to do this alone. Uncle James, at the end, he was lonely despite having me around. He wanted a partner, someone to share the good days and the hard days with. I understand that now more than I did before. This ranch, this life, it's better with someone beside you." "Is that a proposal?" Rose asked, her heart suddenly racing. "No," Adam said quickly. "Not yet. It's too soon, and I promised we'd take our time, but I wanted you to know what I'm thinking, where my head is at. When the time comes, if the time comes, I want you to know what kind of life I'm offering. Not some fantasy, not some easy existence. Real life, rancher's life, with all the hard work and uncertainty that comes with it." Rose appreciated his honesty even as it overwhelmed her. "I appreciate you being clear. But Adam, you have to understand, I need more than just a proposal of practical partnership. I've been alone too long, been too careful with my heart for too long. If we're going to do this, if we're going to build a life together, I need to know there's real feeling between us. Not just convenience or obligation, but real love." "I'm already halfway in love with you," Adam said quietly. "I have been since that first day. But I want you to have time to catch up, to be sure. I don't want you agreeing to marry me because it's practical or because you're scared of being alone. I want you to choose me because you love me too." Tears filled Rose's eyes. "You're making it very hard to be cautious and sensible." "Good," Adam said with a slight smile. "Because you're making it very hard for me to be patient." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the clouds move across the big sky, and Rose felt something in her chest expand and settle, like pieces clicking into place. Over the next few weeks, Rose's life in Lincoln took shape. Her sewing business grew steadily as word spread about her quality work and fair prices. She moved out of the boarding house and into a small room above the general store that was cheaper and gave her more space to work. Mrs. Chen and Martha Stevens became friends, the kind of practical female friendships Rose had missed since leaving Boston. The Wednesday quilting circle welcomed her, and she found herself part of the community in a way she'd never managed in the big city. And through it all, there was Adam. He came into town twice a week without fail, always finding time to see her, to talk, to court her properly. He brought her wildflowers from the range, which made her laugh because they were half wilted by the time he got them to town. He bought her dinner at the hotel restaurant and took her on long walks where they talked about everything and nothing. He taught her to ride, patiently working with her until she could manage a gentle mare without embarrassing herself. Rose found herself falling, slowly and surely and completely. She fell for the way Adam listened when she talked, really listened, like her thoughts and opinions mattered. She fell for his dry humor and his unexpected moments of poetry when he described the land he loved. She fell for the way he treated his ranch hands with respect, the way he was kind to animals and children, the way he never expected her to be anything other than herself. 2 months after she arrived in Lincoln, Adam took her back to the ranch for Sunday dinner. His 3 ranch hands were there, curious and polite, and Rose found herself cooking for a crowd in the big ranch kitchen, laughing as she worked alongside Adam to put together a meal that was nothing fancy but filling and good. After dinner, the hands made themselves scarce, and Adam led Rose out to the porch to watch the sunset. The sky was magnificent, all gold and orange and purple, the kind of sunset that only happened in the wide open spaces of the West. "Rose," Adam said quietly, taking her hand. "I know we said we'd take our time, but I have to ask, do you love me? Because I love you completely and entirely, and I'm not good at hiding it anymore." Rose turned to face him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Yes," she said simply, "I love you. I think I started loving you that first day when you offered to help without expecting anything in return, and I've fallen deeper every day since." Adam's face broke into that brilliant smile she'd come to adore. "Then will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy rancher who's better with cattle than words? Will you help me build a life here that's worth living?" "Yes," Rose said again, laughing through sudden tears. "Yes, Adam, I'll marry you." He kissed her then, sweet and gentle at first, then deeper as she responded, wrapping her arms around his neck and letting herself feel all the love and hope and joy she'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I'll do everything I can to make you happy," he promised. "I'll work hard, I'll be faithful, I'll love you until my last breath." "I know," Rose whispered. "I trust you." "When?" Adam asked. "When can we get married?" "Because now that you've said yes, I don't want to wait any longer than necessary." Rose laughed. "We need at least a few weeks to plan things properly. I need a decent dress, and we should have the bands read at church, and I want Mrs. Chen and Martha there as witnesses." "A month," Adam negotiated. "I'll give you a month to get everything ready, but not a day longer. I want you here in this house as my wife where you belong." "A month," Rose agreed. They sat on the porch until the stars came out, making plans and dreaming about their future, and Rose felt happy in a way she'd never thought possible. This wasn't the safe, practical marriage she'd come west to find. It was something better, something real and deep and worth all the risk. The next month flew by in a whirl of preparation. Rose made herself a new dress, cream-colored cotton with tiny blue flowers that echoed her calico, but fancier, with lace at the collar and cuffs that she embroidered herself. Mrs. Chen threw her a small party at the boarding house, inviting all the women Rose had befriended. Martha Stevens gave her a beautiful quilt as a wedding gift, hand-stitched with a pattern of interlocking rings. The merchants in town contributed various household items, welcoming Rose officially into their community. Adam spent the month getting the ranch house ready, adding touches of comfort he thought she'd appreciate. He bought a new mattress for the bed they'd share, splurging on the expense because he wanted her to be comfortable. He fixed up the second bedroom as a sewing room so she could continue her work if she wanted. He bought real curtains from the catalog, let Rose pick them out, installed them carefully in the main room. They were married on a Saturday afternoon in October, when the heat had finally broken and the air was crisp and clear. The circuit preacher officiated, and it seemed like the whole town turned out to witness the ceremony. Rose wore her new dress and carried a small bouquet of late-blooming wildflowers that Adam had ridden out early to pick himself. Standing in the schoolhouse, holding Adam's hands while the preacher spoke about love and commitment, Rose felt overwhelmed by emotion. She'd come to Lincoln expecting nothing but basic survival, maybe a tolerable partnership with an old man if she was lucky. Instead, she'd found this, real love with a good man, a community that welcomed her, a future full of possibility. "I do," she said when the preacher asked, her voice clear and strong, and Adam's answering "I do" was fervent enough to make people laugh. The kiss was chaste, proper for public viewing, but Adam's eyes promised more for later, and Rose felt heat flood through her. The reception was held at the hotel, tables pushed together, food brought by various families, music provided by a cowboy with a fiddle and another with a guitar. Rose danced with Adam, then with Sheriff Garrett, then with John Chisholm and half a dozen other ranchers and merchants. Everyone was kind, everyone welcoming, and Rose finally understood what it meant to belong somewhere. As evening fell, Adam helped her into the buggy for the ride out to the ranch, their ranch now, and Rose felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with anticipation. She was married to this man now, committed for life, and tonight would be their first night truly together. Adam seemed to sense her nervousness because he kept up a gentle stream of conversation during the drive, pointing out landmarks in the moonlight, telling her stories about various parts of the ranch, making her laugh. By the time they reached the house, Rose felt calmer, ready. He carried her over the threshold, making her laugh again, then set her down gently in the main room where lamplight glowed warm and welcoming. "Welcome home, Mrs. Oakley," he said softly. "It sounds strange being called that," Rose admitted. "Good, but strange." Adam cupped her face gently in his hands. "We can take this as slow as you need. I know this is all new and probably a bit frightening. But Rose, I love you, and I'll never hurt you, and we have all the time in the world to learn each other." Rose leaned into his touch, feeling safe and cherished and loved. "I'm not frightened," she said honestly. "Not of this, not with you. I love you, Adam. Show me what our life together is going to be like." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and led her to their bedroom where he made love to her with patience and tenderness that made her cry happy tears. Afterward, wrapped in his arms in the darkness, Rose felt complete in a way she never had before. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a home and a future and yourself." Adam held her closer. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, for coming to Lincoln even though you didn't have to stay, for letting yourself love me back. You make simple beauty look like everything, Rose. You're everything." The first year of marriage was an adjustment for both of them, learning to live together, to navigate the daily realities of sharing a life. Rose discovered that Adam was terrible at remembering to take off his boots before coming inside when he was preoccupied with ranch concerns. Adam discovered that Rose got grumpy when she hadn't slept enough and needed coffee before attempting conversation in the morning. But they also discovered joy in the small things. Cooking together in the evenings, working side by side on ranch projects, sitting on the porch after dinner watching the sunset. Rose continued her sewing business, and Adam supported her fully, never expecting her to give up work she was good at and enjoyed. The ranch prospered under Adam's careful management, and they were able to hire another hand and expand the herd. Rose made the house into a real home, adding comfort and beauty without losing the practical functionality. She planted a garden, fought a constant battle with the harsh climate and limited water, but managed to coax vegetables and herbs, and even a few flowers into existence. She learned to ride well enough to accompany Adam on short trips around the ranch, learning the land the way he knew it. The community continued to welcome them as a couple. They had friends over for dinner, attended dances and social events in town, became part of the fabric of Lincoln life. Rose joined the Ladies' Aid Society and helped organize charity events. Adam joined the Cattlemen's Association and earned respect as a fair dealer and knowledgeable rancher. 18 months after their wedding, Rose realized she was pregnant. She told Adam one evening on the porch, watching him carefully for his reaction. His face went through a rapid series of emotions: shock, joy, fear, overwhelming love before he pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "A baby," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Our baby." "Rose, are you happy about this?" Terrified, Rose admitted. "But yes, happy." "Are you?" "Happier than I have words for," Adam said. Though I'm terrified too. What if I'm not a good father? What if something goes wrong? What if I let you both down?" Rose pulled back to look at him firmly. "You're going to be a wonderful father, Adam Oakley. You're kind and patient and loving, and any child would be lucky to have you. And yes, things could go wrong, but they could also go beautifully right. We'll face whatever comes together." The pregnancy progressed well despite Rose's initial fears. Adam was attentive almost to the point of being overbearing, worrying about her constantly, trying to prevent her from doing any work. Rose had to gently but firmly remind him that she wasn't made of glass, and that women had been having babies while still living their lives since the beginning of time. Mrs. Chen and Martha became invaluable sources of advice and support, helping Rose prepare for the baby's arrival, sharing their knowledge and experience. The women of the quilting circle made a beautiful baby quilt together, each contributing squares in different patterns and colors. The community rallied around them, excited for the new life coming into their midst. In late spring, on a warm May evening, Rose went into labor. Adam rode for the doctor and for Mrs. Chen, then paced anxiously while Rose labored through the night and into the next day. Mrs. Chen stayed with her throughout, coaching her through contractions, encouraging her when Rose was exhausted and ready to give up. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, Rose delivered a healthy baby boy. When Mrs. Chen placed the squalling infant in her arms, Rose felt love so fierce and overwhelming it took her breath away. This tiny person, this perfect little human that she and Adam had created together. Adam came in then, looking haggard and terrified, and stopped short at the sight of his son. "Come meet your boy," Rose said softly, and Adam approached like he was in a dream, reaching out tentatively to touch the baby's tiny hand. "He's perfect," Adam whispered. "Rose, he's absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" "I thought maybe James," Rose said. "After your uncle. The man who brought us together even though he never got to meet me." Adam's eyes filled with tears. James Oakley. Uncle James would have been proud. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, wrapping his arm around Rose's shoulders so they could both look down at their son. "Thank you, Rose. Thank you for this, for him, for everything. Thank you for loving me," Rose said, "for giving me a family again." James was a good baby, healthy and strong, and Rose recovered well from the birth. Adam proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with his son, getting up for night feedings without complaint, changing diapers without fuss, spending hours just holding the baby and talking to him in a soft voice. The ranch hands were unexpectedly helpful, taking over more duties to give Adam time with his family. The whole community seemed to embrace little James, bringing gifts and advice, offering help whenever needed. Life settled into a new rhythm, shaped around the baby's needs. Rose still did some sewing work when time allowed, but her focus shifted to motherhood and running the household. Adam continued managing the ranch, but he made sure to carve out time every day for his family, for being present in these precious early years. When James was 6 months old, sitting up and starting to show his personality, Rose and Adam took him to town for a church service. Walking into the schoolhouse with her husband on one side and her baby in her arms, Rose felt a wave of gratitude so powerful it made her dizzy. 3 years ago, she'd been alone and desperate in Boston, seeing no future beyond endless work and grinding poverty. Now she had a husband she loved desperately, a beautiful son, a home that was truly hers, a community that valued her. She had everything she'd never dared to dream of having. That night, after James was asleep in his cradle and she and Adam were settling into bed, Rose turned to her husband. "I love you," she said simply. "I need you to know that. Every single day I'm grateful that your uncle sent for a mail-order bride. Grateful that you were kind to me that first day. Grateful that we took a chance on each other." Adam pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I'm the grateful one, Rose. You came all this way in that calico dress, not knowing what you'd find, and you stayed. You gave me a chance when you didn't have to. You made this house into a home, made my life into something worth living. You're my everything. You said that the first day we met, that Calico made simple beauty look like everything," Rose remembered. "And I meant it then, and I mean it even more now," Adam said. "You are everything to me, Rose Oakley. You and James, you're my whole world." They made love slowly and sweetly, relearning each other after the long weeks of recovery, reconnecting in the way only they could. Afterward, Rose lay awake listening to Adam's steady breathing beside her and James's soft baby sounds from the cradle, and felt perfectly, completely at peace. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges and joys. When James was 2, Rose discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was less frightened, more confident in her body's ability to do this work. Adam was still anxious but better at controlling it, trusting Rose's strength and knowledge. Their daughter was born on a cold January day, fast and fierce, entering the world with a lusty cry that made everyone laugh. They named her Sarah, after Adam's mother, and she proved to be as different from James as night from day. Where he was calm and thoughtful, she was active and adventurous, always into everything, keeping Rose constantly on her toes. The ranch continued to prosper. Adam's careful management and good instincts paid off year after year. They were able to build a bigger barn, expand the house to include a proper parlor and 2 more bedrooms, hire more hands. Rose's sewing business evolved into teaching, and she started offering lessons to young women in town who wanted to learn the trade. Lincoln itself was changing, growing from a rough frontier town into a more established community. New families arrived, new businesses opened, a real school was built, and a permanent church established. Rose and Adam found themselves pillars of the community, respected and valued for their contributions. When James was 5 and Sarah was 3, Rose became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first 2, leaving her exhausted and sick for months. Adam worried constantly, hovering even more than before, and Rose had to work to keep her own fears at bay. But in the end, everything turned out well. Twin boys arrived in late summer, identical and tiny but healthy. They named them Thomas and William, and suddenly the household was chaos. 2 infants needing constant care on top of 2 older children who had their own needs and demands. It was exhausting and overwhelming and wonderful all at once. Adam threw himself into fatherhood with 4 children, somehow managing to give each one individual attention while still running the ranch. Rose learned to function on minimal sleep and somehow keep everyone fed and clothed and loved. The older children adored their baby brothers, constantly wanting to help take care of them. James, at 5, took his role as big brother seriously, always making sure the twins were safe. Sarah, at 3, liked to sing to them, making up elaborate songs that made no sense but seemed to soothe them when they were fussy. Life was full and busy and sometimes exhausting, but Rose couldn't imagine wanting anything different. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it back in Boston. This sense of belonging, of purpose, of being part of something larger than herself. One evening, when the twins were about 6 months old and finally sleeping through the night, Rose and Adam managed to steal some time alone on the porch. It was early autumn, the air crisp and cool, the stars brilliant overhead. "You ever regret it?" Rose asked. "Taking on an unknown mail-order bride who showed up unexpectedly, all of this," She gestured at the house behind them where 4 children slept. Adam looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Regret you. Regret our family, never, Rose, not for 1 second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. These children are the best thing that ever happened to me. This life we've built together, it's more than I ever dreamed of having." Even when the twins are both crying at 3 in the morning and Sarah has gotten into the flower again, and James is asking complicated questions about why the sky is blue, Rose asked with a smile. "Especially then," Adam said firmly. "Because all of that, the chaos and the mess and the exhaustion, it means we're alive, Rose. It means we have this big, messy, beautiful family together. It means we took a chance on each other and built something real." Rose leaned against him, feeling safe and loved and home. "I love you, Adam Oakley, more than I ever thought I could love anyone." "I love you too, Rose. Thank you for wearing that calico dress and staying in Lincoln and giving me a chance. Thank you for everything." They sat together in the darkness, comfortable in the silence, comfortable with each other after years of partnership and love. Inside, one of the twins started fussing, and they both smiled, rising together to go take care of their son. The years continued to unfold, bringing the usual mix of joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. The children grew, each developing their own personality and interests. James showed early talent for ranching, following Adam around from the time he could walk, soaking up knowledge about cattle and land management. Sarah proved to be artistic, drawing and painting anything she could get her hands on, much to Rose's delight. The twins, as they grew, revealed themselves to be natural horsemen, fearless in the saddle even as toddlers. There were hard times too. A drought one year that tested their resources and resilience. An illness that swept through Lincoln and affected 3 of their 4 children. Terrifying weeks where Rose and Adam barely slept, nursing their kids through fevers and coughs. The death of Martha Stevens, who'd become like a grandmother to their family, leaving a hole in their lives. But through everything, Rose and Adam faced it together, their love deepening with each shared experience. They learned each other's moods and needs, developed the kind of shorthand communication that came from years of partnership, became not just lovers but true partners in every sense. Rose continued her teaching, finding deep satisfaction in passing on her skills to the next generation. She taught Sarah, and to everyone's surprise, James, who turned out to have a careful touch and patience for detailed work. She taught dozens of young women over the years, many of whom went on to use those skills to support themselves and their families. Adam expanded the ranch steadily but carefully, never overreaching, always thinking long-term. He earned a reputation as one of the most respected ranchers in the territory, known for his honesty, his fair dealing, and his knowledgeable approach. He mentored younger ranchers the way his uncle had mentored him, passing on knowledge and support. Together, they became known as a power couple in Lincoln, people who could be counted on for advice, for help, for support when times were tough. Their home became a gathering place, always open to friends and neighbors, always welcoming. When James turned 18, Adam gave him a piece of the ranch to manage himself, teaching him business and responsibility. James thrived under the trust, proving himself capable and wise beyond his years. Sarah, at 16, was already selling her artwork in Santa Fe and talking about studying in Boston, wanting to see the world Rose had left behind. The twins, at 13, were inseparable and already planning to start their own ranch together someday. Rose watched her children growing into capable, loving adults and felt proud beyond measure. This was legacy, she realized. Not just land or money or property, but these four people who would go out into the world carrying the love and values she and Adam had worked so hard to instill. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Rose with a trip to Santa Fe, just the two of them, leaving the children with trusted friends for a week. It was the first time they'd been truly alone together since the twins were born, and it felt almost scandalous, this freedom to focus entirely on each other. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, explored the city, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Away from the daily demands of ranch and family, they rediscovered each other, the people they'd been when they first fell in love and the people they'd become through years of partnership. 20 years, Rose marveled as they sat in their hotel room one evening. How is it possible that 20 years have passed? Because we've been living instead of just surviving, Adam said. Because we built something real together, something that required time and patience and hard work. Do you remember that first day? Rose asked. When I got off the coach in my calico dress and everything was falling apart. I remember thinking you were the prettiest thing I'd ever seen, Adam said. I remember being terrified to talk to you, terrified you'd take one look at Lincoln and get back on the coach and disappear forever. I almost did, Rose admitted. I was so scared, Adam. Everything had gone wrong and I had no plan, no safety net. If you hadn't been kind to me that day, if you hadn't offered help without expecting anything in return, I don't know what would have happened. But I was kind and you stayed and we fell in love, Adam said, pulling her close. And here we are, 20 years later with 4 incredible children and a life that's more than either of us dreamed of having. That calico dress brought me everything, Rose. You brought me everything. Rose kissed him, slow and sweet, letting herself fall into the moment, into the love that had sustained them through 2 decades of life together. You brought me everything too. A home, a family, a place to belong. Love, real love, the kind I'd stopped believing existed. You gave me all of that. They made love that night with the passion of newlyweds and the knowledge of long-time lovers. And Rose felt grateful all over again for the courage she'd found to stay in Lincoln that first day, to take a chance on a cowboy with honest eyes and a kind heart. When they returned home, the children had planned a surprise anniversary party, inviting half of Lincoln to celebrate with them. Rose stood on the porch of their home, watching friends and neighbors arrive, watching her children laugh and play and help with preparations, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Adam came up beside her, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Oakley." "Happy anniversary, Mr. Oakley. Any regrets?" he asked, echoing her question from years before. "Not a single one," Rose said honestly. "This life, this family, this love, it's everything I never knew I needed." The party was wonderful, full of laughter and good food and dancing. Rose danced with Adam, then with each of their children, then with Sheriff Garrett, who was now elderly but still spry, then with John Chisholm, who congratulated her on 20 years of civilizing Adam Oakley. Mrs. Chen, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, pulled Rose aside to tell her how proud she was of the life Rose had built. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Rose stood with Adam watching the sunset, their 4 children around them, and felt complete. This was what she'd been searching for all those years ago when she'd answered James Thornton's advertisement. Not just security or stability, but this, love and family and belonging. The years continued to pass, bringing more changes. James married a sweet-natured girl from a neighboring ranch and gave them their first grandchild, a sturdy boy they named Adam James. Sarah did go to Boston to study art, returning 2 years later with a portfolio full of beautiful work and a quiet writer she'd fallen in love with. They settled in Santa Fe but visited often, eventually giving Rose and Adam a granddaughter who had Sarah's artistic talent and her father's way with words. The twins proved impossible to separate, even in love, somehow managing to fall for a pair of sisters from El Paso. The double wedding was one of the biggest events Lincoln had ever seen, and Rose cried happy tears watching her youngest sons marry good women who would partner with them in life the way she'd partnered with Adam. As they moved into their 50s, Rose and Adam began gradually stepping back from the day-to-day work, letting James take over more of the ranch management, giving themselves time to enjoy their grandchildren and each other. They'd worked hard for decades, built something lasting, and now they could reap the rewards. They took up new hobbies, Adam learning to woodwork and creating beautiful furniture for their children's homes, Rose expanding her teaching to include other crafts beyond sewing. They traveled a bit, seeing parts of the territory they'd never had time to explore before. But mostly, they just enjoyed being together, the comfortable companionship of a long, happy marriage. When they celebrated their 30th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and more friends than they could count, Rose looked around the gathering and felt awed by everything they'd built. From that first terrifying day in Lincoln, wearing her calico dress and trying to be brave, to this, a legacy of love and family that would continue long after they were gone. That night, alone in their bedroom, Adam held Rose close and whispered, "You still make simple beauty look like everything. More now than ever." "We're old now," Rose laughed. "Gray hair and wrinkles and all. Don't care," Adam said firmly. "You're still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're still everything to me, Rose, always will be." They continued that way for many more years, growing older together, watching their grandchildren grow, eventually welcoming great-grandchildren into the family. The ranch passed fully to James, who ran it with the same care and integrity his father had taught him. Sarah became a renowned artist, her paintings of New Mexico landscapes hanging in galleries across the country. The twins built their own successful operation, proving that partnership and hard work could create something lasting. Through it all, Rose and Adam remained the center of the family, the foundation everything else was built on. Their love story became legend in Lincoln, the mail-order bride who'd come west expecting one thing and found something infinitely better, the cowboy who'd seen beauty in Calico and had the courage to pursue it. When Adam passed away peacefully in his sleep at 78, Rose grieved deeply, but not hopelessly. They'd had 50 good years together, 50 years of love and partnership, and building a life worth living. He'd given her everything he promised that first day and so much more. She'd held his hand as he slipped away, telling him she loved him, thanking him for everything, promising to be strong. She lived another 5 years after that, surrounded by family, still teaching, still creating, still being the heart of the family Adam had started with her. When her time came, she went peacefully, with her children around her, secure in the knowledge that the legacy she and Adam had built would continue. Her last thoughts were of that first day in Lincoln, standing in the dusty street in her calico dress, terrified and alone, not knowing that the tall cowboy approaching on horseback would become her whole world. Not knowing that taking a chance on love would lead to 50 years of happiness, to children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to a life rich with meaning and purpose and joy. She'd come west looking for security and found everything instead. And it had all started with a simple calico dress and a cowboy who knew how to see beauty in simple things. The funeral was held on a perfect autumn day, the sky blue and clear, the air crisp and clean. It seemed like everyone in Lincoln turned out to pay their respects, along with people from all over the territory, who'd known Rose or been touched by her kindness and skill over the years. The church was packed, standing room only, and the preacher spoke about a life well lived, about love that transformed everything it touched, about legacy that would last for generations. James spoke, his voice breaking as he remembered his mother's strength and kindness, the way she'd made their house a home, the way she'd loved his father with everything she had. Sarah read a poem she'd written, words painting pictures of calico dresses and endless skies and love that conquered fear. The twins stood together and told stories that made everyone laugh through their tears, remembering Rose's patience and humor, and the way she'd managed to raise 4 very different children with grace. They buried her next to Adam on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a big sky that went on forever, in the land they'd both loved. The headstone was simple but beautiful, carved with both their names and a single line. "You make simple beauty look like everything." After the funeral, the family gathered at the ranch house, 4 generations coming together to remember and celebrate and grieve. The great-grandchildren ran around outside, playing the way children do, finding joy even in sadness. The grandchildren shared memories, telling stories to the younger generation about the grandmother and grandfather who'd built all of this from nothing but love and hard work and courage. James stood on the porch where his parents had spent so many evenings watching the sunset, and felt the weight of legacy settle on his shoulders. This ranch, this family, this community, all of it had started because his mother had been brave enough to come west, because his father had been kind enough to see her, because they'd both been willing to take a chance on love. "She had a good life," his wife said softly, coming to stand beside him. "They both did. 50 years together building all of this, that's more than most people get." "I know," James said, "but I'm going to miss her, both of them. This house feels empty without them." "It's not empty," his wife said, gesturing at the people inside, at the children playing in the yard. "It's full of them, of their love, of everything they built. That doesn't go away just because they're gone. They're in all of us, in every person they touched, in every life they improved. That's legacy, James. That's immortality." James knew she was right. His parents lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the stories that would be told for generations, in the values they'd instilled and the love they'd demonstrated. The mail-order bride who'd come west in a calico dress, and the cowboy who'd seen beauty in simple things, had created something that would outlast them by far. Years passed, and the story of Rose and Adam became part of Lincoln's history, told and retold, embellished and romanticized, but always rooted in truth. The ranch continued to prosper under family management, passing down through generations. The house was preserved and expanded, each generation adding their own touches while respecting the foundation Rose and Adam had built. Sarah's great-granddaughter became a writer and penned a book about her famous ancestors. The love story that had started with an advertisement in a Boston newspaper and ended 50 years later with 2 people who'd built a legacy of love. The book was popular in the region, and tourists sometimes came to Lincoln to see the ranch where it had all happened, to stand on the porch where Rose and Adam had watched so many sunsets together. But more than the physical legacy, more than the land or the buildings or even the family, what Rose and Adam left behind was an example of what love could build. They'd shown that taking chances could lead to joy, that kindness was never wasted, that simple beauty really could be everything if you had the eyes to see it. Their story became a reminder that sometimes the best things in life came from unexpected places, that disaster could turn into opportunity, that being brave enough to stay when everything said to run could lead to more happiness than you'd ever dreamed possible. And somewhere in all of that, in the stories told around dinner tables, and the memories passed down through generations, in the ranch that still stood strong and the family that still gathered there, Rose and Adam lived on. The mail-order bride in her calico dress, and the cowboy who'd loved her, forever young in memory, forever together in the land they'd loved, forever an example of what real love could create. The legacy wasn't just land or money or even family, though those were all important. The real legacy was the proof that love could transform everything, that two people willing to be vulnerable and brave could build something that lasted far beyond their own lives. That simple beauty really was everything when you had someone to share it with. And every autumn, when the light turned gold and the air turned crisp, when the sky blazed with color at sunset, the family would gather at the ranch to remember Rose and Adam, to tell their stories again, to make sure the next generation understood where they came from and what kind of love had built the foundation they all stood on. It was a good legacy, a true legacy, the kind that mattered. And it had all started with a simple moment of courage, a simple act of kindness, and a simple recognition that beauty came in many forms, sometimes wrapped in calico, sometimes found in honest eyes and a gentle heart, sometimes discovered in the willingness to take a chance on love even when everything was uncertain. Rose and Adam Oakley had lived their lives fully, loved completely, and left behind something that would matter for generations. They'd proven that mail-order brides and cowboys could find real love, that taking chances could pay off beyond imagination, that building a life together based on honesty and respect and genuine affection could create something beautiful and lasting. And in the end, that was everything. Simple beauty that became everything, just like Adam had said that very first day, just like he'd proven every day for 50 years, just like their legacy would prove for generations to come. The story of the mail-order bride who wore calico and the cowboy who saw beauty in simple things became a legend in Lincoln, in New Mexico, in the broader history of the West. But more than that, it became a truth that lived on in their descendants, in the love they created, in the proof that sometimes, if you're brave enough to take the chance, simple beauty really can become everything you'll ever need.